They get up and they follow him, and they learn by going. And as they do, they eventually realize that it was God who was walking with them all along the way, that it was God who was teaching them all along the way. At the end of John's gospel, Simon, who was one of these first 4 disciples who was called in Matthew, he and the others, they're back at the place where they started. They're back at the Sea of Galilee, where our story took place today, where Jesus first called them. Except now Jesus has died, and Simon and some of these other fishermen, they've come back to their boat. They start to do what they used to do before Jesus came along. They go back to it. And so they go out and they fish. And they fish all night on the Sea of Galilee, where they used to get their livelihood. But though they fish all night, they catch nothing. And then a man from the shore calls out to them and says, "Didn't you catch any fish?" "No," they say. And so then this guy starts telling them, "Well, cast your net on the other side of the boat," which is unwanted advice for sure. These guys know what they're doing. This is their trade. They're fishermen after all. Also, their boat is small, so it's not like putting your net from one side to the other is suddenly going to change what is beneath you. What difference does it make what side of the boat the net is on? It is all the same sea below them. But maybe they're tired, maybe they're sad, maybe they're desperate, and so they go ahead and they cast their net on the other side. And what happens? They catch so many fish that they can't even haul them all in. It's then that they realize who this man on the shore is. Of course, it's Jesus. And so Simon jumps off the boat and swims to him. He leaves all the fish and all the other guys behind. The others drag the net in as much as they can. They pull in that catch of fish. And they find Jesus sitting on the beach with a small fire where he's already cooking fish and bread for them for breakfast because they're hungry. They've been fishing all night. They've been following Jesus, and they realize that God has been walking with them all along the way, teaching them to walk the way of love, guiding them to fish and eat and be satisfied, and showing them that they never walk alone. It was a common understanding at the time that God was a fisher of people, and that to say, "I'll show you how to fish for people," means that Jesus is telling them something important about God and about their place in God's work. To fish for people is to cast a wide net. When you fish with a net, you can't decide, you can't just choose the fish that you like to get caught in the net. All the fish get caught. This is the wisdom of God in this metaphor. God casts a net and brings in a catch that is bigger than we can imagine. God sifts through our hearts and delights in each shell that God finds there. It's the wisdom of God embodied in Jesus. Following Jesus' way of love starts with learning that God casts this wide net, a net that catches us too, and that God uncovers treasure in us. From there, we follow this Jesus into the world to sift through sand and to cast our net and to find treasures and delight in them and share them as part of loving God and loving our neighbor. To fish for people is to cast this wide net and to know that God catches us. To know that God casts this net and has a catch bigger than we can imagine, and that is the wisdom of God that Jesus